A 10ª cúpula
I
do
declare
P20
open the
inaugurados
10th
os seus
P20
trabalhos.
and
Compõe a
opening
mesa com
the
esta
session.
presidência o
With this
excelentíssimo
presidency,
senhor,
His
presidente
Excellency,
da Câmara dos
President
Deputados do Brasil,
of the
Arthur
Chamber
Lira,
of Deputies,
a senhora
Mr. Arthur
presidente da
Lira,
União Interparlamentar, UIP,
from the
Tulia
IPU,
Exxon,
Mrs. Tulia
senhora
Axon,
secretária-geral das
Secretary
Relações
General
Exteriores,
of the Foreign
embaixadora
Affairs
Maria
Ministry,
Laura da
Ambassador
Rocha,
Maria Laura da
representando o
Rocha,
senhor ministro de Estado das
representing the
Relações
Minister
Exteriores,
of Foreign
Chanceler
Affairs,
Mauro Vieira.
Mr. Ambassador
Convido
Mauro
todos
Vieira.
para,
I
em
invite you
posição de
all,
respeito,
in position of
entoarmos o
respect,
hino nacional
to
brasileiro.
hear the Brazilian hymn.
Ouviram do Ipiranga as margens plácidas de um povo heróico brado retumbante, e o sol da liberdade, raios fúlgidos, brilhou no céu da pátria nesse instante. Se o penhor dessa igualdade conseguimos conquistar com braço forte, em teu seio, ó liberdade, desafio nosso feito à própria morte. Ó pátria amada, salve, Brasil, um sonho imenso, raio lívido, de amor e de esperança a terra desce. Sem teu formoso céu risonho e límpido, a imagem do cruzeiro resplandece. Gigante pela própria natureza, és belo, és forte, pálido, formoso, e o teu futuro exprime essa grandeza. Terra dourada, entre outras mil, és do Brasil, ó pátria amada. Dos filhos desse sol és mãe, gente, pátria amada, Brasil. Deitado eternamente, imenso, esplêndido, ao som do mar e à luz do céu profundo, fulguras, ó Brasil, florão da América, iluminado ao sol do novo mundo. Do que a terra mais garrida, teus risonhos, lindos campos têm mais flores, nossos bosques têm mais vida, nossa vida no teu seio mais amores. Ó pátria amada, salve, Brasil de amor eterno, seja símbolo, o amaro teus tentas estrelado, e digo verde louro desta flâmula, mas no futuro e glória no passado. Mas se ergues da justiça a fala forte, verás que o filho teu não foge à luta. Ninguém repente a dor, a própria morte. Terra dourada, entre outras mil, és do Brasil, ó pátria amada. Dos filhos desse sol és mãe, gente, pátria amada, Brasil.
Neste momento, convido todos a assistirem ao vídeo institucional da 10ª Cúpula de Presidentes
Of
dos
the
Parlamentos
10th
do G20,
P20.
P20.
Of the
Welcome to Brazil, host of the 10th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. Welcome to Brasilia, a shining example of modernist architecture in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here at the P20, the Palace of the Brazilian National Congress is home to over 30 delegations from across 5 continents, a unique space for parliamentary diplomacy. Deputies and senators from the world's largest economies, along with international organizations and special guests, are coming together to tackle the pressing challenges of our time. Fighting hunger, poverty, and inequality. Promoting social-environmental development and energy transition. Reforming global governance. Join us for the 10th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, connecting parliaments for a fair world and a sustainable planet.
I would like to initially greet the President of the Chamber of Deputies, Congressman Arthur Lira, in whose name, in the name of Congress and the Federal Senate, I'd like to pay my respects to the dedication and the success of the P20 within the Brazilian National Congress. I'd like to greet the President of the IPU, Ms. Tulia Axon, representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Secretary General, Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha, the President of the STM, Brigadier Francisco Joeli Parente Camelo, representing the TCU, Minister Jorge Oliveira. My greetings to the delegations from the G20 that honor us with their presence, from India, South Africa, African Union, Argentina, Canada, China, European Union, France, Indonesia, Italy, Mexico, Korean Republic, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the invited delegations, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Mozambique, Portugal, São Tomé and Príncipe, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, ladies and gentlemen, members of the delegations of the IPU, Mercosul, Parlaméricas, UN Women, Organization of the United Nations. You're all welcome. It is a reason of great pride to all of us, senators, congressmen of Brazil, to receive this 10th meeting of the Parliamentary Speakers Summit, the P20. Here, we will have the opportunity to exercise the parliamentarian exercise, to debate democratically important themes of global reality, themes that require joint understanding as regards the causes and solutions. The group of the 20 was created in 1999 as a cooperation forum in the economic sphere with the objective of develop policies and strategies to face the challenges, the global challenges. Distributed in the 5 continents, the countries that are part represent 85% of the GDP worldwide, 75% of the international commerce, and together have two-thirds of the population of our planet. Today, here, we have representatives of almost all of the world population. That is the dimension of meetings of this size. The decisions taken by the speakers of these parliaments have unquestionable impact on the destination of all nations. And aware of this responsibility and with the objective of making the decision of this group more permeable to democracy, in 2010, the P20 started its work. The decision to incorporate the national parliaments within the discussions of the G20 was truly fundamental. And by means of the actions of these parliaments, it is possible to foment closeness approach between government decisions and the various sectors of society. The parliaments constitute the resonance box of popular demands and have the noble mission of translating the will of the people into laws that guarantee peace, security, and well-being. It is the parliament that approaches the people to the decisions of government. Constituting the P20, the G20 is up to the democratic challenge that is inherent to the good working of the international system, where we demand more dialogue, transparency, and participation of the various nations and their peoples. A fact that is very relevant, especially if we consider the delicate moment where we are, a moment where the democracy is questioned in many areas of the globe. The B20 contributes to the strengthening of the diplomacy, of the parliamentary diplomacy, an important instrument to debate and to find common ways to face problems that affect all countries. I'd like to refer to, for example, migratory flows, the scarcity of food, and climate change, whose consequences do not have boundaries or borders. All of these dimensions are advancing on the P20, making the debates of the G20 more inclusive and democratic. So in that sense, it was natural to advance even more. During the Brazilian presidency of the group, we carried out the first women's parliamentarians meeting in Maceió, in the state of Alagoas, with the motto, building a fairer world and a sustainable planet. Especially in regard to this event, our recognition to the President of the Chamber of Deputies, the Congressman Arthur Lira. On the occasion, over 30 delegations and of international organizations promoted an ample and substantive exchange on laws, best legislative practices, public policies, and other initiatives to face the main challenges of this time. So this is a once-in-a-time event that shows the commitments of the greatest economies of the world in the sense of bringing women to the center of discussions of the great problems of our age. Before the summit of the B20, we carried out in this Congress a parliamentary forum of the G20 with the motto is bound to the recommendations of the first women's parliamentary meeting of the B20 with the presidency of Arthur Lima and with the notable participation of the noble Senator Leila Barros, which is the leader of the Women's Caucus in Brazil, and which I take this opportunity to greet. In the parliamentary forum, were dealt priority themes like climate justice, sustainable development, amplification of female representativity in decision forums, and combating inequality. So we would like to start the 10th P20 with the motto, Parliaments for a Fairer World and a Sustainable World. We will have 3 working sessions in which we will talk about combating hunger, poverty, and inequality at the world level, social environmental development, and a inclusive and fair transition, and global governance and the challenges of the 21st century. To combat hunger, poverty, and inequality in our planet is certainly one of our strongest or biggest challenges. Food insecurity, undernutrition is advancing with no check. Data from the FAO shows that the levels of food insecurity, that acute level, have increased in very worrisome numbers, going from 40% of the population in 2018 to 21.5% in 2023. So undernutrition has affected 700 million people. So it is our task as parliamentary speakers of the G20 to overcome the bottlenecks, be they environmental or economic, that limit food inclusion, nutritional inclusion. So in that sense, we should ask ourselves, how can we help in the definition of policies that can help with foods and nutritional security in our countries? Hunger is a social disease with which we cannot accept. Equally challenging is the promotion of social environmental development and the ecological transition that is inclusive. Another problem that has global consequences is natural calamities or those provoked by human actions. Climate change is a reality with which we cannot run away. Natural phenomena like droughts, floods, storms are more and more intense and destructive, leading to the many people being displaced, sanitary crisis, and increase of poverty. Parliaments should have the commitment to implement the objectives of sustainable development and of promoting equality. We cannot accept that millions of people should survive in misery, excluded from well-being, and we should assure opportunities that are equal for all. So, for this to happen, we have to adapt the global governance to the challenges of the 21st century. As we know, the international system is facing a multifaceted crisis at the geopolitical, economic, and environmental arenas. World problems of greater complexity and range need a constant improvement of our decision-making processes within these institutions created after World War II, especially, in this case, the Security Council of the UN, the IMF, and the World Bank. At the same time, the financial institutions need to engage in facing inequalities and in promoting the green economy. And for that, it is necessary to direct the mechanisms, finance mechanisms, to promote social and economic advances.
aos
with an
desequilíbrios e
environmental
contextos
commitment
nacionais.
and
Não
to
menos
deal with
importante é o
unbalanced issues
fortalecimento
within the
do
countries
sistema de transações
and the strengthening
multilaterais.
of multilateral
Nesse sentido,
transactions.
precisamos estar sempre
In that
atentos
sense, we
às
have to be
ferramentas
aware
disponíveis
to the
à
tools that are
Organização
available
Mundial do Comércio,
to the
a
World
fim de
Trade
que seja
Organization,
aperfeiçoada a
so that
governança do
the
comércio
governance of international
internacional,
commerce be
tornando-o
improved,
mais aberto,
making it more
justo
open,
e
fair,
sustentável.
and sustainable.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies
está
and
muito claro
gentlemen,
que os
it is
problemas
very clear
globais
that
são de
global
tal
problems
magnitude
are of
que
such a
requerem
magnitude
soluções
that they
conjuntas.
require joint
Nenhum
solutions.
país
No
conseguirá
single
impor
country
sua visão
could
de mundo
impose
e
its view of the
resolvê-los
world and
sozinho.
solve it
Do
alone.
mesmo modo, as
In the
grandes
same way,
questões da atualidade
the great
não
issues of
podem
our
ser
time
entendidas
cannot be understood
separadamente. Não é
separately.
possível
It is not
falar de
possible to
combate à
talk
fome
about
e à
combating
pobreza
hunger and
sem falar
poverty
em transição
without talking
energética,
about
em
energy
mudança
transition,
climática,
climate
em
change,
governança global.
and in global
Tudo
governance.
está
Everything
profundamente
is deeply
conectado.
connected.
O P20,
The
dado o seu peso
P20, given its
socioeconômico e suas dimensões
socio-economic weight
geopolíticas,
and its
é a
geopolitical
cúpula
dimension,
adequada
is
para o
the
encaminhamento
adequate
dessas
summit
soluções,
to
pois
deal with
reúne
these
as
solutions,
principais
because it
lideranças
joins the main
parlamentares mundiais.
parliamentarian
Por
leaders
meio
of
da
the world.
diplomacia
Through
parlamentar,
parliamentarian
temos a
diplomacy,
preciosa
we have the
oportunidade
precious
de
opportunity
debater e
to
encontrar
debate
formas
and to
comuns
find
de
common
abordar
ways
questões
of
complexas em
approaching
nível global
complex
e
global
avançar
issues
na
and to
implementação
advance
plena
in
e
the full
efetiva da
and
Agenda
effective
2030
implementation
para o
of the
desenvolvimento sustentável.
of the 2030
Cientes de
agenda,
suas três dimensões,
and aware of these three
social,
dimensions, social,
econômica e
economic,
ambiental,
and
não
environmental,
podemos nos
we
olvidar
cannot
da importância
forget
e da
of the
atenção às
importance and
tecnologias
attention to
digitais,
digital technologies,
sobretudo da
especially in
inteligência
artificial
artificial e da
intelligence
internet das
and the
coisas,
Internet of
para o
Things.
enfrentamento desses desafios. O
When
Congresso
we
Nacional
face these
Brasileiro
challenges, the
tem
Brazilian
trabalhado para
Congress has
produzir
worked
arcabouço
to
legislativo
produce a
sólido
legislative
que
framework
regule as
that is
tecnologias
solid,
digitais
that
e a
regulates
mídia,
these digital
trazendo segurança jurídica
technologies
para
and
esse
media
segmento.
to bring security to these
Precisamos de
arenas.
uma
For that,
infraestrutura
we
digital
need a
eficiente,
digital infrastructure that is
inclusiva
efficient,
e resiliente,
inclusive,
que
and
promova
resilient,
a
and that
conectividade global
promotes
em prol da
global
redução das
connectivity
desigualdades.
in order to
Tendo sempre
reduce
como meta
inequalities,
o
always
desenvolvimento
having the
social
objective of
centrado
social
no ser
development
humano.
centered,
Neste momento em que
focused on
iniciamos
the
os
human
trabalhos
being.
da 10ª cúpula
When
de
we start
presidentes
this
de parlamento
10th
do G20,
G20
quero,
Parliamentary
com
Speakers Summit,
otimismo,
I would like with
dizer a
optimism
todos
to
que
tell
estamos
you all
diante de uma
that we
oportunidade
are
ímpar de
in a
contribuir para a
unique
construção
situation
de
to
mundo
build
melhor,
a
mais
better world,
inclusivo,
more
justo,
inclusive, more fair,
solidário
with more
e
solidarity
ambientalmente
and
saudável. Eis a
environmentally
beleza da
healthy.
vida
That
parlamentar.
is the beauty
Por
of
meio do
parliamentary
diálogo, do
life.
entendimento
Through
e do
dialogue,
consenso,
understanding, and
podemos
consensus,
lograr
we
resultados
can get
duradouros em benefício
long-lasting
dos povos
results
de
in the
todo o mundo.
benefit of the peoples
Juntos
of the world.
vamos fazer.
Together, we
Muito
will
obrigado.
make it happen. Thank you very much.
Neste instante, tenho a honra de conceder a palavra
This moment, I would have the honor to hand the floor to Mr. President of the Chamber of Deputies, Federal Representative Arthur Lira. Your Excellency, President of Federal Senate, Mr. Rodrigo Pacheco, in your name, I would like to salute all the senators of Brazil present here at P20 Summit. Dear Lady Tulia Axon, President of the Interparliamentary Union, and representing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the General Secretary of Foreign Affairs, the Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha. Once again, salute Mr. Brigadier and representing the Federal Court of Accounts, Jorge Oliveira. To you, ladies and gentlemen, members of the G20 delegations here, mentioned by dear President Rodrigo Pacheco, welcome to all who participate in this opening ceremony of the World Parliament of P20. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Brasilia, to the 10th Summit of the Presidents of Parliament of G20. It is an honor and a satisfaction to receive in this plenary very honorably named after Mr. Ulisses Guimarães, the Chamber of Federal Representatives in Brazil, a stage of important milestones of Brazilian history and a symbol of our country. All the representatives gathered here with the representatives of the P20 speak on behalf of 2/3 of world population. Our countries represent over 85% of all the income generated in the world and 70% of international trade. There are parliaments of all regions representing different cultural and political traditions. This grants a special responsibility to us, providing a special moment for the proposals of the summit of P20 leaders in the 18th and 19th of this month in Rio de Janeiro. Dear ladies and gentlemen, for this 10th Summit of G20, we intend to discuss the roles of parliamentary members in 3 axes: the combat to hunger, poverty, and inequality, sustainable development, and the economical, social, and environmental scopes, and the reform of global governance. No one will be excluded from the resemblance of these topics and the ones chosen by the Brazilian presidency of G20. With this convergence, we want to reinforce the synergies and expand the voices of the parliamentary representatives in the summit in Rio de Janeiro. Inequality persists. In some cases, it gets deeper and penalizes hundreds of thousands of human beings with hunger, poverty, and the lack of perspectives overall for women and children. According to the United Nations Program for Development, the Human Development Index in half of the poor countries in the world regressed in the past years. We need to double down our efforts to split in our countries and nations the abundance of goods, services, and wealth that economy and technology provides to us today. In the legislative scope, many things can be done to mitigate the effects of inequality. Here in Brazil, for instance, we are committed with the reform of our tax system. We are moving to a tax model that is more simplified, rational, and fair, correcting disproportional expense over the poor ones and increasing predictability for the ones who generate income, opportunities, and jobs. In the axis of sustainability, we are looking at urgent challenges of climate change. They are expressed increasingly frequent in extreme events such as floods in the south of Brazil in May and droughts, as we can see in the Amazonic region, just to name 2 situations in our country. Climate change reaches populations in an unequal way. The movements for responsibility of the effects of these disasters have to be shared in a proportional and fair way. It is important to strengthen dialogue and cooperation among the countries to avoid choosing punitive and unilateral formulas. As we participate in the P20 Summit in New Delhi last year, I stated that the Chamber of Deputies in Brazil was committed to the green agenda, connected to the energy transition and the regulation of carbon market. Therefore, it is a great satisfaction to say to you, dear ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, that in the past months we had fruitful advancements in this agenda. We approved bills of law to regulate the offshore wind power exploration and the production of low-emission hydrogen, the Green Fund, and the program for energetic acceleration. We are also working hard to regulate the carbon market in Brazil. Last month, the law of the future fuel was approved, considered the biggest decarbonization program for the matrix of transport and mobility in the world. Also recently, the legislative, executive, and judiciary branches of Brazil signed a pact for the ecological transformation around measures that reinforce the core role of ecological sustainability in the development plans for our country. These actions strengthen a normative framework that is one of the most advanced ones in terms of environment in the world. We then consolidate the credentials of Brazil to be a leader in the international debate on sustainable development. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in our third axis of debates, we will deal in this summit the role of the Parliament in the building of a governance adapted to the 21st century. We are going through a period of tensions among nations, and it can be counted in this sad scenario, humanitarian, climate, and sanitary crisis that have contributed to the increase of inequalities. To reiterate our strong condemnation to any form of terrorism, we renew our pledge for parliaments to engage in the promotion of peace, especially protecting the lives of innocent civil people. An important part of this process demands a renewal of global governance. The institutions and mechanisms reflect a world that does not exist anymore. Their responses do not have the necessary legitimacy to the solutions that can be efficient and fair. As representatives of our peoples, the Parliament must increase their mobilization towards international treaties for the balance of economical work and environmental sustainability and prosperity to all. In that sense, the renewal of multilateralism proposed by the Pact for the Future, adopted in September at the UN, will only be reached if there is an involvement of parliaments in the creation of proposals to remodel global governance. Ladies and gentlemen, in all these discussions, there is an aspect that is undeniable, the participation of women in spaces of power. As parliaments, we have the responsibility to promote measures that enable the feminine presence in the decision instances of all scopes. In July, we carried out the first Parliamentary Women Summit, the P20 Women, that produced a set of recommendations in the format of the Charter of Alagoas, coming from the G20 Parliamentary Forum. This unprecedented deed was subscribed as a milestone in the story of P20 and G20, confirming that the feminine representative is paramount and unpostponable for the decision-making in our countries. I would like to reiterate the invitation for the next presidencies of P20 include the P20 women as an essential part of our agenda in parliamentary diplomacy. My dear colleagues, this event restates the paramount role of parliaments in the international context, which is one of the most challenging ones in human history. I'm certain that we will finish this event corresponding to the expectations of our peoples and societies, that the work sessions will be fruitful and will show proposals that will help us offer sustainable solutions for the problems that only the togetherness and the commitment of all can resolve. The building of a better world is in our hands. Thank you very much. I would like to thank His Excellency, the President of the Chamber of Deputies of Brazil, Federal Representative Arthur Lira. I would like to render the floor to Tulia Exxon.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, President of the Upper House of Brazil, Senator Rodrigo Pacheco, Your Excellency, President of the Lower House of Brazil, Federal Deputy Arthur Lira, Secretary General of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha, representing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mauro Vieira, Honorable Speakers of Parliament, distinguished colleagues, it is a real pleasure for me to be with you today at this 10th Summit of the Speakers of Parliament of G20 member countries. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Brazilian Parliamentary Authority for the wonderful hospitality extended to us, as well as for all the preparations made for our meeting under the overall theme of building a just world and sustainable planet. We convene here in Brasilia to address the pressing challenges of our time and to advance collective action on sustainable, equitable, and inclusive growth. This summit is a powerful forum, bringing together the legislative leaders of the world's largest economies to contribute to global cooperation and explore how parliaments can help tackle the structural issues we face, such as hunger, poverty, inequality, and the urgent need for a just ecological transition. As representatives of the people, we know that strong, coordinated political will and cross-national engagement are essential to achieving sustainable development for all. The challenges we discuss today, from food insecurity and the climate crisis to inequality and fragmented global governance, are interconnected and transnational. The IPU is committed to supporting parliaments in navigating these complexities, fostering collaborative actions and promoting sustainable solutions that serve both our people and our planet. Colleagues, we stand at a crossroad. According to the United Nations, our ability to now achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 is in jeopardy. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent economic, social, and environmental crisis have pushed 23 million more people into extreme poverty and left 123 million more people facing hunger in 2022 compared to 2019. This harsh reality is exacerbated by a climate crisis that reached unprecedented levels in 2023, intensifying the vulnerability of over 1 billion people who lack necessities like adequate sanitation, housing, and nutrition. Conflicts, inadequate socio-economic policies, and inaction compound these dire circumstances. Colleagues, we cannot let these trends persist. As parliamentarians, we are uniquely positioned to serve as champions of prevention, mitigation, and action. We can translate international commitments into national realities, hold our governments accountable, and ensure that budgets, policies, and programs reflect the needs of both our citizens and our planet. Parliaments bridge the global and the local, creating a critical link between people and governments. Our role is not limited to national boundaries. Parliamentary diplomacy and international cooperation are more important now than ever. The IPU has been at the forefront of advocating for parliamentary engagement on global issues, especially sustainable development. Drawing on that experience, I propose a consolidated set of priorities to guide parliamentary action. Firstly, we need to prioritize SDGs as a guiding framework. They are collective blueprints for a fairer, a more sustainable future. Parliament should embed sustainable development goals aligned principles in legislation, policies, and budgets to tackle poverty, promote health and education, and advance environmental sustainability. By working within this cohesive framework, we address the interconnected nature of these challenges, ensuring inclusive progress that benefits all of us. Secondly, we need to advance gender equality for inclusive growth. Women's empowerment is central to sustainable development. Parliaments can enact policies that guarantee women's equal access to education, employment, and leadership roles, strengthening economies and communities alike. Addressing gender disparities unlocks the full potential of our societies, creating pathways to the resilience and prosperity. Thirdly, Parliaments must lead in driving climate action and resilience, recognizing that climate change demands immediate and coordinated efforts. By supporting national commitments to climate adaptation, resilience, and emissions reductions, parliaments can ensure alignment with global climate targets and the SDGs. The IPU's guide, 10 Actions for Stronger National Climate Commitments, offers practical guidance to effective oversight of these commitments, empowering parliaments to hold governments accountable and ensure transparency. Through rigorous oversight, we can scrutinize budgets, monitor policy impacts, and prioritize protection for those most vulnerable to being left behind. Finally, in everything we do, we must promote peace and social stability. Peace is foundational to sustainable development. Parliaments must advocate for policies that foster social cohesion, prevent conflict, creating a stable environment where communities can thrive. I call on you all to take forward our Geneva Declaration from earlier this year on parliamentary diplomacy, building bridges for peace and understanding. Before my concluding remarks, I would like to touch on a topic of governance. Like all human endeavors, our current governance at both national and international levels needs to be revisited, for bettering complex challenges we're facing today. In addition to the 2030 Development Agenda and its accompanying SDGs, we now have a comprehensive Pact of the Future that should serve as our shared roadmap towards making this a better and more peaceful world. As a parliamentary community, we must strive to bring a robust parliamentary contribution to the G20 process and to make sure that our words are parallel to action and results. Honorable speakers, dear colleagues, these actions require our steadfast commitment. Let us leverage this summit to forge partnerships and inspire progress. Together, we can lead our nations towards a future that upholds human dignity, preserves our planet, and leaves no one behind. I thank you for listening.
Agradeço a senhora presidente da União
I would like to
Parlamentar,
thank Ms. President
tenho a honra
of
de conceder a palavra nesse
IPU,
instante à senhora embaixadora
Tulia
Maria
Axon.
Laura
I
da
would like
Rocha,
to hand the floor
ministra
to Ms.
de Estado
Ambassador
interina
Maria
das
Rocha,
Relações Exteriores.
the interim
Excelentíssimo senhor presidente do
Minister
Senado
of
Federal,
Foreign
senador
Affairs.
Rodrigo Pacheco,
Your
excelentíssimo
Excellency,
senhor
President
presidente
of
da Câmara
Senate,
dos Deputados,
Rodrigo Pacheco,
deputado federal Arthur
President
Lira,
of
senhora presidente da
Chamber
União
of Deputies, Rodrigo
Interparlamentar,
Pacheco,
Tulia Axon,
the
senhoras e
President
senhores parlamentares,
of
demais
IPU,
representantes de delegação
Ms.
de
Axon,
países e de
and
organismos
all the
internacionais
representatives
aqui
of
presentes,
countries and
representantes
international
do corpo diplomático
organisms,
acreditado
and
no
also
Brasil,
the
senhoras e senhores
representatives of
parlamentares
diplomatic
brasileiros,
body,
senhoras e senhores.
dear
É uma
parliamentarians,
enorme satisfação participar dessa solenidade de
parliamentarians from
abertura da
Brazil.
10ª cúpula de presidentes dos
It is
parlamentos
an honor
do
to
G20
participate in
e
this
novamente
summit
estar
of
presente
the
em uma
Parliament of
atividade do
G20
P20.
and be
Tive
again
a honra de
participating in the
acompanhar a primeira
P20
reunião de
activity. I had the
mulheres
honor to
parlamentares do P20
be part
no
of
último
the
mês de
first
junho em
women's
Maceió e pude testemunhar o caráter
parliamentarian
histórico daquela
gathering, and I
iniciativa
could
quando
witness the
parlamentares
historic
mulheres de 26
characteristic of that
países
gathering when
aprovaram
women
a
of
Carta de
26
Alagoas entregue ontem ao presidente da Câmara dos
countries
Deputados, Arthur Lira.
could
Chegaremos
approve
neste mês
the
à etapa
Alagoas
final da
Charter of
presidência
Alagoas.
brasileira do G20 com pleno êxito
In the
nossa
presidency of
a cúpula de líderes
G20, we are
ocorrerá no Rio de
in
Janeiro,
in
nos
excellent
dias 18 e
participation.
19 de
In
novembro.
Rio, in
Será o ponto
the
de
18th and
chegada do
19th
intenso
of
trabalho
November will
realizado
be
desde
the
dezembro do
apex
ano
of
passado,
our work
quando assumimos
since
a presidência
November
do
last year
Banco
when we took office at the
Colhemos
presidency of
importantes
G20.
resultados em meio
We
às
collected
três
important
prioridades que
outcomes
escolhemos para a nossa
within the
presidência
priorities we
brasileira:
chose
a
for the
inclusão
Brazilian
social, o
presidency:
combate à fome e
social
pobreza,
inclusion, the
a
combat to
transição
hunger and poverty,
energética e o desenvolvimento
energy
sustentável em
transition,
todos os
sustainable
seus três
development
pilares
in all of
e
these
a
its
reforma
three
das
pillars,
instituições de
and the
governança
reform
global.
of
Destaco
global
nesse
governance.
conjunto a Aliança
I'd
Global
like to
contra a
highlight
Fome e a
the Global
Pobreza
Alliance
e o
Against
chamado
Hunger
à
and
ação
Poverty
pela
and
reforma
the
da
call to
governança
action
global.
for
Em
reform
mundo
of
cada
global
vez mais
governance. In a
complexo,
world that is
contamos
increasingly
com os
complex,
parlamentos
we
dos países
count
membros
on
do
the parliament
G20
of the
para a
countries members of
implementação dos
G20 to
importantes
implement
resultados a
important
serem obtidos pela
outcomes to be
presidência
obtained
brasileira.
by
Estou
Brazilian
segura
presidency.
de que a
I
cúpula
am
de
certain that
presidentes dos
the
parlamentos do
summit
G20,
of
que
presidents
hoje
of
se
the parliaments
inicia,
of
será mais uma
G20 that
importante
starts today
contribuição para
will be
esse
the most
conjunto
important
de
contribution
resultados
to
e
this set
esforços
of outcomes and
bem-sucedidos.
efforts
Muito
that
obrigada a
are
todos e bom
successful.
trabalho.
Thank you all and have a great work.
Agradeço a senhora
I'd like to
embaixadora
thank
Maria
Ms.
Laura
Ambassador
da
Maria Laura da
ministra de
Rocha,
Estado interina das
the
Relações
interim Minister of
Exteriores
Foreign
do Brasil.
Affairs of Brazil.
Antes de encerrar
Before
esta
we
solenidade de
finish
abertura,
this
gostaria de
opening ceremony, I would like to invite
participar do
you
almoço de
to
trabalho
participate of our
que
work
ocorrerá
lunch
às
that
12
will
horas no
take place
restaurante da
at
Câmara
12
dos
noon in the
Deputados.
restaurant of
Nossas
the Chamber of
equipes de
Deputies.
cerimonial
Our ceremonial
ajudarão na
teams will
condução
help
das
you
delegações
to
ao
conduct
local do
delegations
almoço.
to the
Em
venue
seguida,
of the lunch.
14 horas em
At
ponto,
2 p.m. sharp,
início a
we
primeira
will start
sessão de
the
trabalho
first
da 10ª
working
cúpula de
session of the
presidentes
10th
dos parlamentos
Summit
do
of the
G20,
President of Parliament
P20,
of
com o tema
G20,
a
P20,
contribuição
with the
dos
topic, the
parlamentos
contribution
no combate
of
à
Parliament
fome, à
in
pobreza e à
tackling hunger,
desigualdade. Agradeço às
inequality,
autoridades presentes
and
e a
poverty.
todos que
I'd like
nos
to thank the
honraram com
authorities
seu
present here and all of you who honored with
Declaro encerrada
being
esta
here, so
sessão.
I declare this session finished.